My name is Gillian, and I'm 27 years old. I've always considered myself lucky to have a close-knit family, my parents who have been married for 30 years, and my older sister Vanessa who's 30. We've always been there for each other through thick and thin, but this past year has really tested those bonds in ways I never expected. About a year ago, Vanessa's marriage fell apart. Her husband Mark had been cheating on her with a coworker, and after a messy fight that the boys unfortunately overheard, he moved out. Just like that, Vanessa became a single mom to 2 elementary school boys, Ethan who's 9 and Lucas who's 7. I don't know how I'm going to manage, Vanessa sobbed over coffee at my apartment the week after Mark left. Her eyes were puffy from crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. The divorce lawyer costs a fortune, and Mark is being difficult about child support. We'll figure it out, I told her, squeezing her hand, you're not alone in this. And I meant it. My parents and I immediately stepped up to help. Mom and Dad started buying groceries for Vanessa and the boys, stocking her fridge every Sunday without fail. I offered to pay half of her rent, which was a significant chunk of my salary as a marketing coordinator, but seeing her relief made it worth it. I also rearranged my work schedule to help with the boys. Since I got off work at 4 o'clock and Vanessa worked until 6 o'clock, I'd swing by my parents' house after work to pick up Ethan and Lucas, who went there after school. I'd bring them to my apartment, help with homework, and make them snacks until Vanessa picked them up. Weekends became Aunt Gillian time, too. I'd take the boys to movies, the science museum, or the arcade while Vanessa caught up on sleep or housework. I covered all those expenses without thinking twice about it. Aunt Gillian, you're the best, Lucas would say, his face lit up with excitement as I handed him tokens at the arcade or bought him popcorn at the movies. Those moments made it all worthwhile. I loved my nephews, and seeing them happy despite their parents' divorce made me feel like I was making a difference. The first few months went smoothly. Vanessa was genuinely grateful, always thanking me profusely when she picked up the boys. She'd sometimes bring me coffee or my favorite pastry as a small token of appreciation. But around the 4-month mark, I started noticing changes. Small ones at first. Sorry I'm late, Vanessa said one evening, rushing in at 7:15 instead of 6 o'clock, work was crazy. The next week, she was late again, and the week after that, she was 2 hours late. The deadline for this project is killing me, she explained, but something seemed off. Her hair was freshly styled, and she was wearing a new blouse I hadn't seen before, one that was decidedly more low-cut than her usual work attire. I noticed makeup too, not her usual light application, but a full face with smoky eyes and red lips. Not exactly standard office wear. New look? I asked casually. Just trying to feel good about myself again, she replied with a shrug. After Mark, my confidence took a hit. I understood that, after a divorce, wanting to feel attractive again made sense. But as the weeks went on, the late pickups became the norm rather than the exception. One evening as I helped Ethan with his math homework, he looked up at me, Mom's dating someone, you know. I tried to keep my face neutral, did she tell you that? He shook his head, no, but I heard her talking on the phone. She was laughing the way she used to laugh with Dad before they got mad at each other all the time. Kids notice everything. I wasn't upset that Vanessa might be dating, she deserved happiness after what Mark put her through. What bothered me was that she wasn't being upfront about it, and was taking advantage of my time instead. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. Vanessa was supposed to pick the boys up at 6 o'clock. By 8 o'clock, she still hadn't arrived, and her phone was going straight to voicemail. By 9 o'clock, I was genuinely concerned. I called my parents. Mom, have you heard from Vanessa? She was supposed to pick up the boys 3 hours ago, and her phone is off. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Oh honey, I thought she would have told you, she, had plans tonight. What kind of plans involve turning off your phone when your children are waiting for you? Gillian, my mother said in her placating voice, your sister has been through a lot. She's finally feeling like herself again. There are some things we need to explain, but not right now. The boys can stay with you tonight, can't they? I looked at Ethan and Lucas, already in their pajamas that I kept at my apartment for emergencies, playing a board game on my living room floor. Of course they can stay, I said, but Mom, this isn't right. We'll talk tomorrow, she said and hung up. I made up the pull-out couch for the boys and tucked them in, assuring them everything was fine and their mom would pick them up in the morning. As I lay in my own bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized something had shifted. What had started as temporary family support was turning into something else entirely, something that revolved entirely around Vanessa's needs and none of mine. Vanessa showed up at my apartment at 10:30 the next morning. The boys were eating the pancakes I'd made them, still in their pajamas and watching cartoons. When I opened the door, she breezed in with a smile that faded when she saw my expression. "Hey, sorry about last night," she said casually, as if she'd been 15 minutes late instead of not showing up at all. I pulled her into the kitchen, away from the boys' earshot. "Where were you? I called you a dozen times." "My phone died," she said, but her eyes didn't meet mine. She was wearing the same clothes as yesterday, her makeup slightly smudged. It didn't take a detective to figure out what had happened. "You were with someone, it wasn't a question." Her face lit up then, and she actually giggled. "Yes, and Gil, he's amazing. His name is Ryan. We've been seeing each other for a few weeks now. Last night was, well, you know." I felt my blood pressure rising. "No, I don't know. What I do know is that you left your children waiting, turned off your phone, and didn't bother to tell me you weren't coming." Vanessa's smile disappeared. "They were with you. I knew they were safe." "That's not the point," I tried to keep my voice down. "You can't just dump your responsibilities whenever you feel like it. What if I had plans? What if there had been an emergency?" "But there wasn't," she said defensively. "You're making this into a bigger deal than it is. Next time I'll ask, happy now?" "No, I'm not happy, you're being completely irresponsible." That was when she lost it, irresponsible? I've been taking care of 2 kids by myself while working full-time. You have no idea what that's like. You with your perfect little life and your freedom to do whatever you want. "My perfect little life," I shot back. "The one where I'm paying half your rent and spending every evening and weekend taking care of your kids?" "No one asked you to do that," she shouted, loud enough that the boys definitely heard. "Mom," Ethan appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking worried. Lucas was right behind him. Vanessa immediately switched gears, her face softening. "Get your things, boys, we're leaving." As they gathered their backpacks, Vanessa turned to me with cold eyes. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? The saint who swoops in to save the day. Well, I don't need your judgment." She ushered the boys out without another word, slamming the door behind them. I stood in my silent apartment, shaking with anger. My phone rang barely an hour later. It was my mother. "What did you say to your sister?" she demanded without preamble. "Hello to you too, Mom," I said. "I told her she can't just abandon her kids without telling anyone." My mother sighed heavily. "Gillian, your sister is going through a difficult time. She's trying to rebuild her life after Mark destroyed her confidence. You're supposed to help her." "Mom, you're not listening." "No, you're not listening. Family supports family, Gillian. I thought we raised you better than this." The call ended abruptly. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Somehow, I had become the villain in this story. The next few weeks were tense. Vanessa still dropped the boys off with me after school, but now she barely spoke to me. The thank yous disappeared completely. Instead, she'd text, "Running late. Feed the boys dinner." Not a request, but an instruction. I started noticing how much my life had become dictated by Vanessa's needs. When my friend Melissa invited me to a concert on Saturday, I automatically declined because that was when I usually took the boys to the Science Museum. When I saw a dress I loved while shopping, I put it back because the money would go toward Vanessa's rent instead. Every decision I made now involved calculating the impact on my sister and nephews. Want to go on a date? Check if Vanessa might need me. Want to take a weekend trip? Impossible without weeks of advance planning. The breaking point came when my boss assigned me a critical project with a tight deadline. I'd need to work through the weekend to finish it. I can't watch the boys this weekend, I told Vanessa on Thursday evening. I have an emergency project for work, I can take them next weekend. She looked annoyed but nodded, fine, I'll figure something out. Saturday morning, I was deep in spreadsheets when my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Vanessa with Ethan and Lucas, all three smiling. Surprise, Vanessa said cheerfully. Before I could react, she nudged the boys forward into my apartment. I blocked the doorway. Vanessa, I told you I can't today, I have work. Her smile faded. It's just for a few hours. The boys brought their tablets. No, I stood firm. I specifically said I couldn't this weekend, I have a deadline. Her face transformed, anger replacing the fake cheerfulness. You're being selfish, you know that? After everything we've been through? I didn't budge. I told you in advance, this isn't my fault. She turned to the boys dramatically. I'm sorry, guys. Aunt Gillian doesn't want to spend time with you today, she's too busy. That's not what I said, I protested, but Vanessa was already pulling the boys back toward the elevator. I closed my door, leaning against it with a heavy sigh. This was emotional manipulation at its finest. I returned to my work, trying to push the guilt aside. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Ethan. Aunt Gillian, his voice was small and uncertain. We're at the Westfield Mall, at the food court, Mom said to call you. My heart dropped. Where's your mom, honey? She said she had to go do something with Ryan. She told us to call you to come get us. I gripped my phone tighter. She left you alone at the mall? She said you'd come right away. White-hot rage flooded through me. This was beyond irresponsible, it was dangerous. I'll be there in 15 minutes, I told him. Don't move from the food court, okay? Stay together. I grabbed my keys, abandoning my work without a second thought. My sister had gone too far this time. I found the boys sitting exactly where Ethan said they would be, at a table in the food court with half-eaten pretzels in front of them. Lucas's eyes lit up when he saw me, but Ethan looked embarrassed. Aunt Gillian, Lucas ran to hug me. Hey, buddy, I hugged him back, then looked at Ethan. You okay? He nodded, not meeting my eyes. Mom said you were too busy, but you'd come anyway. My blood boiled all over again. Vanessa had manipulated all of us, knowing full well I wouldn't leave her children stranded no matter how angry I was. In the car, I tried calling Vanessa again. Straight to voicemail, naturally. I briefly considered calling the police to report abandoned children, but I knew that would only create more trauma for the boys. Instead, I drove straight to my parents' house. Mom answered the door, surprised to see us. Gillian, boys? What are you doing here? Ask your daughter, I said, ushering the boys inside. She left them alone at the mall and told them to call me, even though she knew I had an important work deadline today. Mom and Dad exchanged looks. Well, Mom said, I'm sure she had her reasons. Stop it, I snapped, louder than I intended. The boys, who had headed for the TV, looked over in surprise. I lowered my voice. Stop making excuses for her. This isn't just irresponsible anymore, it's neglect. She knew you'd come get them, Mom said weakly. That's beside the point. I told her I couldn't watch them today. I have a project due Monday that my job depends on. But she doesn't care about my life or my responsibilities. Dad put his hand on my shoulder. Calm down, Gil, we'll watch the boys until Vanessa comes back. Good, because I won't be available, I said firmly. I'm going home to finish my work, and then I'm done being Vanessa's on-call babysitter. Mom's face fell. What do you mean, done? I mean I've reached my limit. For months, I've rearranged my life around Vanessa's needs. I've spent thousands of dollars supporting her and the boys. And in return, I get treated like I'm the selfish one for having boundaries? She needs help, Gillian, Dad said. She's a single mother. And I'm a single woman trying to build my own life. Why does her life matter more than mine? Neither of them had an answer for that. I left my parents' house feeling both liberated and guilty. Back at my apartment, I threw myself into my work, finishing late Sunday night. As soon as I submitted the project, I opened my messaging app and wrote to Vanessa. I love Ethan and Lucas, but I can't be your backup plan anymore. I won't be available to watch them until you start respecting my time and boundaries. I hit send before I could change my mind. Vanessa read the message the next morning but didn't reply. Fine by me. The following weeks were strange. For the first time in a year, my evenings and weekends were my own again. No homework to supervise, no bedtimes to manage, no cartoons blaring in my living room. I had forgotten what freedom felt like. I started going out with friends again, saying yes to after-work drinks and weekend brunches without calculating childcare logistics in my head. I bought myself new clothes without guilt. I even joined a kickboxing class I'd been eyeing for months. That's where I met Jason. He was the instructor, tall with an easy smile and kind eyes. After class one evening, he asked if I wanted to grab coffee. Coffee turned into dinner, dinner turned into movie nights, and before I knew it, we were officially dating. For 3 months, my life revolved around work, kickboxing, and Jason, and I loved it. Jason and I grew closer over those months. He was thoughtful and supportive, always interested in hearing about my day and sharing his. One evening after a romantic dinner at his place, he suggested something that made my heart skip. My buddy has a timeshare in Hawaii, he said. He's not using his 2 weeks this summer and offered it to me at a fraction of the cost. What do you think? You, me, white sand beaches for 2 whole weeks. Are you serious? I couldn't believe it. That sounds amazing. We both have vacation time saved up, he pointed out. It would be in June, about 2 weeks from now. Yes, I said without hesitation, absolutely yes. As we planned our trip, I realized I should probably tell my family. I hadn't seen them in weeks, not since the mall incident. Maybe it was time to break the ice. When Mom called to invite me to Sunday dinner, I accepted. Walking into my parents' house felt strange after so long away. The familiar smells of Mom's cooking, the sound of the boys playing in the backyard, the family photos lining the hallway, it all gave me a pang of nostalgia mixed with anxiety. Vanessa was in the kitchen with Mom, chopping vegetables. She barely looked up when I entered. Hi, I said awkwardly. She nodded in acknowledgement but didn't speak. Dad came in from the backyard and gave me a hug. Good to have you back, kiddo. Dinner was stilted at first. The boys were excited to see me, chattering about school and friends, but Vanessa remained cool and distant. I let the conversation flow around me, waiting for the right moment. It came during dessert, as Mom served her famous apple pie. I have some news, I said, setting down my fork. I've been seeing someone for a few months now. His name is Jason. That's wonderful, dear, Mom said, genuinely pleased. You'll have to bring him by sometime. Actually, I continued, we're going on vacation together, to Hawaii, for 2 weeks in June. The table went silent, then Vanessa perked up, suddenly interested in the conversation. Hawaii, she repeated, that sounds perfect. The boys have summer break then, and I have vacation time saved up. I stared at her, confused. What? She turned to her sons with a bright smile. Did you hear that? Aunt Gillian is taking us all to Hawaii. Really? Lucas exclaimed, bouncing in his seat. We're going to Hawaii? No, I said firmly, looking directly at Vanessa. I'm going to Hawaii with Jason. It's a couple's trip. Vanessa's smile didn't falter. Don't be silly, there's room for all of us. You'll pay for our tickets too, right? After all, you haven't helped out in months. I looked at my parents, expecting them to step in, but they were nodding along as if this made perfect sense. Something inside me snapped. No, I said, standing up from the table. You and the boys are not coming to Hawaii with us. This is a romantic vacation with my boyfriend, not a family trip. Mom cleared her throat. Gillian, don't you think you're being a bit selfish? It would mean so much to the boys. That word again, selfish, the weapon they'd been using against me for months. Selfish? I laughed. but there was no humor in it. Let me tell you what's selfish. Expecting me to pay for half your rent for a year, I looked at Vanessa, dropping your kids off whenever you want without asking, abandoning them at a mall when I specifically said I was busy. That was one time, Vanessa started. One time is enough, I snapped. And now you think you're entitled to crash my vacation? A vacation I'm planning with the man I love? Dad put his hands up in a placating gesture. Let's all calm down. I am calm, I said evenly. I'm just done being taken advantage of. For the past year, I put my life on hold to help Vanessa. I've spent thousands of dollars, countless hours, and what do I get in return? Being called selfish for wanting 2 weeks to myself. We're family, Mom said, as if that explained everything. Yes, we are, and family should respect each other's boundaries. Family shouldn't guilt each other into sacrificing their own happiness. Vanessa stood up, hands on her hips. How dare you? No, how dare you? I cut her off. How dare you try to manipulate me in front of the boys? How dare you teach them that it's okay to use people and take them for granted? I turned to my nephews, softening my voice. I'm sorry, boys. I know you're disappointed, but this trip is for grown-ups only. Maybe we can do something special together another time. Lucas had tears in his eyes. Ethan just looked uncomfortable, old enough to understand more of what was happening. I'm going now, I told my parents. When you're ready to respect my decisions and my life, we can talk. I walked out, leaving stunned silence behind me. As I drove home, my phone blew up with messages from Vanessa, each one more guilt-inducing than the last. The boys are crying because of you. Family is supposed to help each other. I can't believe you're being so heartless. I turned my phone off. 2 weeks later, Jason and I were on a plane to Hawaii. I had barely checked my phone during that time, focusing instead on preparing for our trip and finishing projects at work. When I did look, I saw Vanessa had posted a passive-aggressive status about selfish sisters who put their own pleasure above family obligations. I resisted the urge to respond. Hawaii was everything we'd dreamed of and more. Crystal clear waters, stunning sunsets, and 2 blissful weeks with no responsibilities except deciding which beach to visit or which restaurant to try for dinner. On our last night in Hawaii, as we walked along the moonlit beach, Jason stopped and turned to face me. These past 2 weeks have been the best of my life, he said. Actually, these past few months have been. Being with you makes everything better. Then he knelt down in the sand, pulling a small box from his pocket, and I gasped. Gillian, I know it hasn't been that long, but I've never been more certain of anything. Will you marry me? Tears filled my eyes as I nodded. Yes, of course I will. The ring was perfect, a simple diamond that caught the moonlight. When we returned home, Jason suggested he move in with me. My lease is up next month anyway, he said. And I'd rather put that money toward our future together. So it was decided. I posted a photo of my engagement ring on social media, not thinking much about it. The next day, my phone rang. It was my mother. Gillian, I saw your post. Congratulations, sweetheart. Thanks, Mom, I said cautiously. Your father and I have been talking, she continued. We owe you an apology. We've been so focused on helping Vanessa that we didn't consider how it was affecting you. I hadn't expected this. Oh. We'd love for you and Jason to come over for dinner this weekend. Your sister and the boys will be here too. I hesitated. Mom, I'm not sure that's a good idea yet. Please, she said, we want to make things right. After discussing it with Jason, I agreed. Walking into my parents' house that Saturday felt different from the last time. Mom hugged me tightly, and Dad shook Jason's hand with genuine warmth. Vanessa was cordial but not overly friendly. The boys, however, were ecstatic to see me. Aunt Gillian, we missed you so much, Lucas exclaimed, throwing his arms around my waist. I missed you too, buddy. Dinner was surprisingly pleasant. Mom and Dad made an effort to get to know Jason, asking about his job and hobbies. Vanessa remained quiet for most of the meal but didn't make any snide remarks. After dessert, Mom raised her glass to Gillian and Jason. "We couldn't be happier for you both." Vanessa didn't apologize that night, but she did invite me to get coffee the following week. Our relationship remained strained, but at least we were speaking again. In the months that followed, I found a new balance. I still spent time with my nephews, but on my terms, when I was free and wanted to, not because I was expected to. Jason and I set up our life together, planning our wedding for the following year. Vanessa gradually became more self-sufficient. She got a promotion at work, started paying her full rent, and became more responsible with the boys. Whether my standing up to her played a part in that change, I'll never know for sure. What I do know is that by finally prioritizing my own happiness, I became a better sister, a better aunt, and a better partner. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to love yourself enough to set boundaries. And that's not selfish at all, it's necessary.